Hey, everybody, and welcome to Pete Carroll Was Right, the confusingly named Alabama football show. As always, it's Carter, Ben, and Mitch here to talk all things Alabama football with you. Well, if you had scripted how you had sort of hoped that season opener would go for Alabama against Louisville, I think you pretty much got it. The offense was more or less unstoppable, scoring at will with Tua in. I think it was. Well, he did like 6 drives and 5 of them were touchdowns, and the other was that fumble by Devontae Smith.
Right, and that was inside the 20-yard line. So yeah, that was pretty it's pretty good.
And then what on defense, they had some issues, but they still got only 14 points to a really good offense. They showed like obvious intense talent at some positions, and then everything that was, you gave Saban some stuff to yell at, which makes him happy, and then but nothing that was not really correctable by like better communication and experience. Nothing that's like, oh, that's so and so is really a liability at this position.
Agreed. Should we spend? I guess. Do you want to? Maybe we'll get to defense second. Do offense first. Should we spend just a few minutes, sort of like I don't know, waxing poetic over the quarterback's performance? He was pretty good.
12 of 16 for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was the like amount of passes that Nick Saban ideally wants to throw in a football game, but the actual content of those passing plays was a little bit different.
Yeah. Give me, so I want to break down the offense a little bit further. I want to just go around. Carter, give me one thing that you were most impressed with by Tua. Because I think there's three main things, and I want to see like if we sort of each are thinking the same thing.
Are you talking like specific plays or
just like his general, his general performance and like him as a quarterback?
Just recognition, kind of just like he gets the ball out fast, like it's there when somebody's open, like he finds them, and then boom.
Yeah,
regardless of where on the field they are.
I was so impressed by his like evasiveness and like ability to like still make plays like down the field throwing the ball after having like avoided a rush.
It was incredible. It was like Tony Romo-esque with like the anticipating the rush and the sort of evasiveness and wiggle in the pocket to evade defenders and then all the while always keeping his eyes down the field and looking to make the plays. Like it's like that Vanderbilt play last year. Like it just wasn't a fluke. At all. Like that's
no.
That's like an extreme.
He basically replicated that play on his first touchdown.
That's right. Yeah. And then so those were 2 of mine, and then my third would just be his ball placement. I mean, he is so accurate, and he manipulates the trajectory so well based on the routes to really sort of get the ball there on time in a good position for his receiver to catch it. Like Carter, like processing speed, Mitch, pocket awareness and evasiveness, and then the ball placement, like those 3 things. I mean, he does each one of those things so well. It's remarkable to watch. I mean, it's really incredible.
Like Pro Football Focus had him as like the highest rated offensive player in the SEC, I think, through week 1.
Yeah, they gave him like a 90-91 grade, which was the definitely top quarterback in the SEC. And it was like second in the country behind like Will Grier.
Yeah, and but it was like the second highest grade on offense or defense. I think only Deontay Thompson had a higher grade in the SEC than Tua did. Which is just like,
it's
not fair, man.
On like 16 passing plays and like a couple of additional quarterback runs.
I know this wasn't technically his debut. This was like his it was his first start, but obviously like he had sort of garbage time last year and then the title game. But like as far as like a first start from a quarterback, I was trying to think of some that are comparable in my mind, and like I can't really think of many. Like Johnny Manziel was not this good like in his first game with A&M.
Yeah, because it was it Florida that they played in the first game, I think.
Yeah. And like he was good, but like I mean that was a really good defense too. But like he wasn't like otherworldly. And then like Deshaun Watson wasn't this kind of player.
No.
The only
I distinctly remember Lamar Jackson's first pass. It was an interception that he threw deep against Auburn.
Yeah. So the only comparison that you can even think of is Jameis against Pittsburgh. Jameis against Pittsburgh, that was like a Monday night. He was ridiculous, and that's the only one that I can even think like.
Josh Rosen's very first game as a true freshman. I don't remember who they played. It was someone terrible, but he was like 21 of 26 for like 350 yards. I remember that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But just remarkable, right?
Yeah.
It's just what's crazy to me is like the hype was so ridiculous coming into this game. Like you got Kirk saying like when he steps on the field, I'm just going to be scared for opposing defenses because they're putting up 50 points every game. And then when he stepped on the field for the first series, Kirk like repeated that and he was like, "Yeah, I'm scared for opposing defense." Like the hype was insane.
And they scored 50 points.
Right. And they scored 50 points. And if he had played like the whole game, they would have scored. Like,
they could have named the score. They could have Ohio Stated somebody.
Yeah, it was like I tell the story a lot, but like when I think about hype, I think of like that Terrell Pryor stuff where I remember somebody saying that the only way he can live up to the hype is if on the first play he throws an 80-yard touchdown pass to himself, and I like that was like the level of hype for Tua.
Yeah.
Saturday, he lived up to it. I mean, he really did. He was so good.
Yeah, it was scary, and it was just like it ended up being such a comprehensive thing that like they didn't have anybody get more than like 7 carries.
Yeah, I mean the ball distribution in general on the offense was really nice. I feel like obviously like it was like I think like Jacobs, Harris, and the other Harris all had like the same amount of carries, right? Like,
yeah.
Like 2 of them had 7 and 1 had 8 or something. Like they basically had the same amount of carries. Maybe even Brian Robinson might have even out carried.
I think Robinson may have had the third most.
Yeah, because obviously like he came on and then like both Judy and Devontae Smith were extremely involved in the passing game. Waddle was pretty involved. Of the notable players, Ruggs was probably the least involved guy, right?
He had 2 catches for 15 yards, and that's just, when you only throw, 26 passes in an entire game, like, right. And 17 completions, like somebody's going to come up on it. Like, Devontae had the most receptions with 4 carries. Damian 7, Jacobs 6, Brian Robinson 7, Najee 8.
Yeah, so very balanced there. And we were talking about coming into the game, the distribution of the carries amongst the backs. Maybe it's gonna be kind of like this, right? Like not the Brian Robinson part, but like for the big 3, like it could just be pretty even. I mean, Damian is still their best back in my opinion, but Jacobs looked like their best back on Saturday. He looked healthy and he looked so elusive and he had so much wiggle and like he looked really good.
Yeah. I think what I told someone about Jacobs recently was if he were white, Bill Belichick would have drafted him yesterday.
He is like that sort of like shavering.
He's got exactly that skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, he looked really good. They ran a lot of like the vast majority of the run game was like counters and stretch plays, like a lot of stuff off tackle, which I think suits him really well.
Yeah.
Like getting him sort of out on the perimeter and putting him in the outside zone kind of puts him in a one cut and go situation. And like I think he's really, really good in that kind of stuff. So I think that maybe like if going forward, like this is kind of going to be the general design of the running game and not so many like, I don't know, power plays or even like isolation, like inside zone type plays. Like I think it really fits Jacobs' running style and his abilities nicely. Yeah. So I think we might just see him like maybe there won't be any like inventive ways way that he's used, he might just be used as a running back and just get him the ball and let him just be like, just one of the normal guys, right?
Yeah.
What else? Did anybody else stand out before we get into like the like schematics and everything? Did anybody else like particularly stand out to you guys besides Tua and Jacobs?
Jedrick Wills.
Yeah. Jedrick Wills.
I'm not sure they've had many, if any, offensive linemen with the kind of like sheer physical talents he has. I mean, there was one like Cole Kublik tweeted out like a Vine length clip of him of like a couple plays where he did really well. And the first one was just like he fires off towards he's like the defensive end is like shaded inside of him, like playing a 4-eye technique. And he fires inside to the defensive end's inside shoulder, plants his feet, gets his hands on him, and just walls him off of like just completely walls him out of the play. And the back went into the gap like right behind him. And it was just like, how do you like to have that burst and reach and then the kind of strength? Like you shouldn't be able to out leverage a guy from that position. And yet he just completely walled him off. And I was like, that was jaw dropping to me.
Yeah. I thought he looked really, really, really good. He's just so much power. Mitch, what about you? Who kind of stood out to you on the offense?
I mean, I wonder how quickly Waddle works himself into the. I mean, is it at this point even a four receiver rotation? Like, is he? Because we talked about last week, it was like the 3 from last season, and then he would be kind of the first one up. But I kind of wonder if he's worked himself like into a starting role.
I mean, he would fit so well. Like because they don't really. I mean, none of the guys they have like they don't have like a traditional like I don't know. None of the 3 receivers that they have strikes me as kind of like the traditional take the top off the defense guy. Mm-hmm. And like I don't know, Waddle just I know he's not super tall, but just on his speed alone, like he looks like the kind of guy who really could do it and would fit in so nicely into that role to give you another dimension. But the wide receivers as a whole are just so explosive. I mean, Judy obviously is really, really explosive, and Devontae Smith is good, and and then you add Waddle, and like I mean, they're just so I don't know, they're so athletic, and they I don't think that they've had like I can't remember them ever having a wide receiver core like this, with this much depth and experience. Like I know they had all of these guys last year plus Calvin, but like the 3 freshmen were sort of uninitiated and weren't getting the same amount of time. And like now, like everybody's got experience, and then you add somebody like Waddle who seems ready to play from day one. I mean, that's a heck of a group.
Yeah, like I don't know if any of these guys, and like maybe we'll see where they develop from here, but I don't know if any of these guys is like a Julio, Amari, Calvin type dude, but like they've never had a group that's like this talented, this talented and capable of being this productive across the board.
Yeah, Waddle is the only 5-star of the bunch, I think, right?
Was Judy?
Like I don't even think Judy was a 5-star, was it?
I think at least like some people had him as a 5-star.
Okay.
How many
he was a composite 5-star, yeah.
How many
what were you saying?
Receivers do you think Alabama has this year?
God, what's gonna hurt them is like Tua getting pulled so early in some of these games.
I think they can get 2. If they play 15 games, I think they can get 2. I don't know if it's like in Nick Saban's DNA to like throw it enough to actually, like just put up the crazy video game numbers. But
when's the last time they had 2 1,000-yard receivers?
I don't think Alabama has ever had 2 1,000-yard receivers in the same season.
Yeah, that's probably true. So
you got to keep in mind that like the Alabama single season record for passing yards is just like Blake Sims in 2014 with like 3,500 yards. So.
Right. And aside from Coop, nobody probably even came close to 1,000. Like Andrew White was probably second, and he maybe like 600 or 700 or something. So yeah, that's if it's ever going to happen, it's going to be this year, given like the talent at the wide receiver position, and then obviously the quarterback.
Or next year when they get all these guys back.
Right. Yeah, that too. Every single player who's not back on the offense next year. It's Jonah's not back. Pierce Baker is finally gone.
Lester's a senior. They'll be doing some shuffling on the offensive line, but skill position, the only player they for sure lose is like Damian.
Is Irv still a junior?
I think so. I think he was a sophomore last year.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and Jacobs is a junior this year, so that's kind of we'll see what
theoretically Jacobs could go. Yeah.
Just as a running back, like you would have that have the incentive possibly, but yeah. What about general offensive line play?
There were some busts at the beginning. I think we've talked about these a bit. I think you highlighted some of those when you were
a couple on the first two series.
Yeah. And that's to be expected. Like, it's the first game of the year. It's the first start for both guys on the right side of the offensive line, and like Leatherwood hasn't really played guard before except in practice. So like, it's not surprising to me that they would have some busts, but like, other than that, we waxed poetic for a while in the preseason about like, how good can this offensive line be? The ceiling still looks extremely high.
Right. I agree. Yeah. The talent, I thought the talent was so obvious on Saturday, and you're right. You have some, like I was saying this on Twitter, but it's like, the two new offensive linemen. The guy who's playing guard started playing guard like 3 weeks ago. The center is not a new offensive lineman, but he's new to the center position. And the quarterback is obviously a new player. So like, all of that stuff is going to culminate, I think, into some sort of communication problem, some bust, maybe some protections get screwed up, whatever, and like that happened. But those things, like you said, Carter, are all very correctable. And I think one thing that was really nice to see is that I don't know if there was a single procedural penalty, at least when Tua was at quarterback. And, that's been a problem off and on for the last few years with procedural penalties. And I don't really remember any. I don't remember any delay of games. I don't even think I remember any false starts. Like, I think the pace that the offense played on under Tua was so nice. And it's easy to keep a good pace when you're playing well. But there were times last year or in the last 2 years with Jalen where I thought that the pace, like even when they were going well, the pace would kind of be erratic and there would be some confusion and then there would be some penalties. And like it was only 6 tries with Tua, but I didn't see any of that on Saturday. So I think that's a reason to be optimistic. What did you guys think about the offense as a whole? Just like because there were obviously a lot of talk about not just like how well are these guys going to play, but like what is the offense going to look like with Tua at quarterback and Loxley at offensive coordinator, and what are the schematics going to be like? And my impression was that it was fundamentally pretty similar to what it had been the previous 2 years. They just traded out some stuff that they didn't need for some stuff that Tua can better deal with than other quarterbacks. So I was curious what you guys thought about the sort of overall offensive approach, at least when Tua was in the game.
Yeah, it was. I mean, really, the major differences were like they kind of, took the gloves off on third down.
Yeah, definitely took the gloves off on third down.
And there were fewer option run plays. That's kind of it. Like the basic structure of the offense is really the same. They didn't, go out and install the air raid or the run and shoot or, do any of these kind of crazy things. It was still, it was a heavy dose of RPOs. Basically the same kind of stuff, just executed better.
Yeah. Mitch, what about you? What did you think about sort of the general offensive approach to the game?
I mean, it was impressive. I mean, I find myself wondering what because, you know, Saban said that he wants Jalen to have a role going forward. I wonder what that is, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it was so comprehensively good when Tua was in, and I don't know. Like, what does Jalen bring to the table at this point? Because I was impressed with Tua running the ball. I mean, we had seen flashes of it last season.
I don't think there's a role for Jalen other than just to be a backup. I don't know.
Unless they're going to do some crazy stuff like that, you know, like the Penn State stuff with the way they use their backup at times last year, where he's kind of like a, oh God, what's his name? That was it Michigan under Brady Hoke, and then went to the Jaguars, and they called him an offensive weapon.
Oh, Denard Robinson.
Yeah, Denard Robinson. Unless they want to make him like Denard Robinson. And do that sort of thing. Like, I don't know. And, you know, I feel like that's still on the table. Like, we didn't see it on Saturday, but they didn't need it on Saturday. So, if there's any role for Jalen other than just being the backup quarterback, that's the only way I can see it happening, because, you know, there was plenty of talk from people. It's like, oh, you know, you could have, you know, a more run-focused offense with Jalen. Well, you know, like we said, the offense wasn't really that different. Like, there's no... And that's almost silly. Like, you don't want to, you know, you only get so much practice time as it is in college. You're not going to have two separate offenses installed.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see. I just don't like, you know, the stuff like with Denard Robinson or with, like, I don't know, like Braxton Miller at Ohio State or something. Like, you know, they had those teams had like an entire offseason, right, to prepare for the fact that that guy was going to play in a unique role. And at least from everything, from all the public facing information that we have, they didn't do any of that with Jalen. Jalen just prepared as if he was a quarterback,
right?
The normal run-of-the-mill quarterback for the whole offseason, spring, summer, fall, whatever. So, you know, not only would you be doing something that, like, might not make sense overall, but you wouldn't be doing that with, like, the same prep time that those other teams would be doing that. So I don't know if I see that as a realistic option.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I guess just the backup and transfer in, you know, January. It sucks, but I mean, we're in trouble. It sucks. It sucks not because it doesn't suck for Alabama. It does. But we can acknowledge, I think, that it sucks for Jalen.
Right. Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to say about the offense, by the way, I thought that they, you know, I have to really go back and rewatch some stuff from last year and whatever, but I thought they did a few more things. There seemed to be less window dressing before the snap.
Yeah,
you know, there wasn't that same jet motion. Like,
I didn't see much motion. Yeah,
yeah, there was a little bit, but there was at times last year where it seemed like, you know, it was like on every single play there was some sort of like jet motion, and that's just not, like, you don't really want to display so many receivers, I don't think, with Tua. So I think it makes sense to sort of scrap some of that. And then I thought that they really diversified the RPO game a little bit. There was a lot of post-snap reads, and I don't think that there was as many of those with Jalen. And I think they just really trust how quickly Tua can process decisions, and then the decisiveness with which he can execute once he makes that decision. And, like, you know, we saw that a couple times, like that on the first drive, there was that really nice RPO against when they had trips to the right and they hit the RPO across the middle to Devontae Smith.
Yep.
And, you know, he was keying, I think, a linebacker to the play side, and the second the linebacker stepped up, he pulled it and threw that quick slant to Devontae. And, you know, he was just, like, I was really impressed with the speed with which he released the ball. after making the decision, because like he can have that kind of elongated release at times, which sometimes slows things down. But like on that one, like as soon as he made the decision to throw the slant instead of hand the ball off, like that ball was out there in like an instant. And then I really also liked the RPO on the overthrow to Judy. I think I can't remember whether
that was a really well designed play.
Yeah, that like and that's cool too, because now that ball was designed to be completed, like maybe 10 to 12 yards or something beyond the line of scrimmage. And I think that's pretty cool that they're starting to incorporate RPOs where you're doing a throw down the middle of the field that's designed to go that far in the air, and like sort of like a tight end pop pass, except a little bit further, and you're getting a really dynamic wide receiver in Judy instead of a
tight end. That's Oklahoma State does a lot of stuff like that. That's a big feature of their playbook, and I think he must have like gotten a request to take it down or something, because Chris Brown tweeted a page from the Eagles playbook where they had a play like that installed, where it's like a second level RPO where you're like keying off a safety basically, and you can it's essentially like it's a perfect like quarter speeder. Because what you do is, teams playing quarters against you and the safeties are flat-footed when they start to take
up to defend the run.
Yeah, exactly. The moment they take that step into defend the run, you pull the ball and throw it on like a skinny post or something behind them.
You have that with Tua that he really just opens up like so many possibilities, right? Is there anything else more you guys want to say about the offense? I mean, we could talk about the offense, for days, but for the purposes of conserving time, it probably is best to like move on, and we probably pick up back on the offense next week. But like, do you guys have anything else that you wanted to add about the offense just generally?
It was awesome. Looking forward to the fireworks this season.
Yeah.
As far as the defense goes, I mean, I think the two big stories in terms of, like good performances are Deontay and Quinnen Williams. Deontay, out there looking like Clinton Dix. I don't think they've had a free safety type with his kind of range and recognition and like closing speed. I mean, he was a missile. He was all over the field, and it's really impressive to see that combination of. And I don't think was that, like, he had that range and that coverage ability, but he didn't have that kind of like human missile hitting ability that Deontay does. So, it's early. He played well in the 2 playoff games, but Deontay is going to be making himself a lot of money in April, because that combination of range and instincts and tackling ability, that's like Earl Thomas-esque.
Yeah. He looked really good. I had no idea, like when they replaced him, or when Hood got hurt last year and they had to replace him. Like I did not know that he was supposed to be, this good, but like he was the best. He was like clearly, Quinn Williams was great too, and we'll get to him in a minute, but I thought that Deontay was clearly the best and most impactful player on the defense on Saturday. And if you asked me who do I think is going to be the best player on the defense throughout the course of the season, I would probably say him.
I mean, it's incredible to have that kind of impact on a game as like a deep safety.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because like there was games where it didn't seem like was doing much, and that was because he was doing such a great job, taking away a large part of the field from a quarterback and shrinking the areas in which Alabama had to play defense, and that was great. But like with Deontay, this was the sort of game where he played similarly well, but maybe they didn't really have this idea. Like Louisville didn't seem to have this idea that he was as good as he was. So they tested him time after time after time, and that allowed him to make that more sort of like maybe like, I don't know the word you want to use, but like tangible or more apparent impact. In terms of like, interceptions and pass breakups and tackles and just, everything. Like he was just everywhere, right? I mean, you would say probably like if you guys had to predict like who the best defensive player is going to be the rest of the year, you would probably say him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, him or Quinnen.
Yeah, or I guess Raekwon's still probably in the conversation, maybe even Mac Wilson. But like I would take Deontay Thompson. That's kind of crazy, right? Like I had no idea that he was supposed to be this kind of player, and obviously we saw flashes of it in the playoff. But I mean, man, it was exciting.
Yeah.
I think we're probably oddly, I think we're probably a little bit less surprised by Quinn. Right? I know we all really liked him last year. Like he didn't play that much, but like on a per play basis, he seemed to make a huge impact.
Yeah. Well, it's like you have those guys that like they're in a minor or a backup role and you like hear about them, right? Like during Quinnen's redshirt year, Jonathan Allen was like, "Oh man, watch out for Quinnen Williams. He's going to be a monster." So he was always someone you like had your eye on. And that happens with guys like crap, I'm trying to think of another example. I had one and lost it. Like Xavier McKinney was one that I remember hearing about last year, that there was like a bit here, a bit there, where people were like, "Oh, the coaches are really high on Xavier McKinney. They think he's going to be really good next year." But there just wasn't that kind of buzz for Deontay. And then he stepped in and it's like, whoa, where the hell did this dude come from?
Yeah, I think that's good. Like maybe like a Reggie Ragland or something, where like he wasn't playing at all his first couple of years, but he heard good things, and then he stepped in and suddenly like he's a very impactful player. Yeah, and like you said, like all the reports. Mitch, who else? Obviously, like Deontay and Quentin got all sort of the press, and they were obviously the two best players on the defense. But did anybody else individually stand out to you as far as for positive reasons?
Anthony looked healthy, and
yeah, that was interesting. Sorry, keep going. Yeah,
I was just contrary. Like I saw some people talking about, or maybe it was Fowler during the game said something about him not looking 100%, but I don't know. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I thought he made a couple splash plays early.
Yeah, that was an interesting narrative that I think emerged from the game, and we heard stuff about this after the game, or saw stuff on Twitter or whatever about how like Anthony looks like a step slow or whatever. I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe people are thinking about his Clemson game. They're thinking about how incredible he was. That was the last time everybody saw him and how impactful he was. And he didn't have that kind of performance in this game. But like, he's still. I thought he still played, pretty well. Like he wasn't like the best player on the field, or he might not have even been one of the 5 best players on the field. But I thought he looked like he was physically fit. He didn't look like he was compromised in any way, I guess. So I was relatively pleased with him.
Dylan Moses had some pretty athletic plays.
Yeah, Moses is an interesting one too. You could really see, I think, at least right now, as he's getting more experience, like you can see how the staff plans to use him, and I think that's in the most aggressive way possible. Like they're going to run blitz him a lot from like every angle, whether that's like lined up in the middle, coming through the A gap, or swing him around to the edge, even on standard downs, and have him run blitz from there. Like, I mean, they are just going to say like, here you are, like we're just going to unleash you into the backfield at every opportunity. And obviously, with how sort of fast and athletic he is, more so than most inside linebackers, that's probably a pretty good role for him.
Yeah, and it's clear like we'll talk about Mac more in a second. I thought Mac was good on the whole. Obviously, we'll talk about the communication breakdowns that happened, when they were playing match underneath and stuff like that. And a lot of that was on the inside linebackers. But, they clearly like Mac in that role, calling the signals and playing Mike. And so they've got Dylan in sort of, and this is the way they kind of use the will linebacker pretty consistently as more of a type of see ball, hit ball type of guy, like you think, Reuben Foster in his junior year. But it's there. They seem to be kind of taking that to its sort of logical extreme with Mac. Like they just want, or with Dylan, they want him to be, just flying all over the field and making as many, and using the like absolutely insane athleticism that he has to be just this, this highlight reel type of player.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else individually from like a positive standpoint?
I thought Trayvon had a great game.
Yeah. He played well. He got targeted a few times. Almost had a pick six when he went on that little out route when he peeled off his man. I thought he generally played well. I thought for the most part the corners played well. I thought I thought Savion played well.
I didn't go back. I haven't gone back and watched a ton of the second half. What did you think of Pat Surtain?
I didn't either. I haven't had a chance to watch
yeah.
the second half either, so I'm kind of out of the loop there too. I mean, my impressions live was that he was pretty good. He gave up inside release a couple times and kind of got beat to the middle of the field in man, but that's okay. He almost had a pick on like the first time he was targeted, right? So I think it's great that they got him so many reps.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the other one of the interesting questions that emerged from the defense in this game is really like who is competing for what spot, right? Because suddenly based on the depth chart and based on everything we knew going into the season, it seemed like, so you've got Trayvon definitely playing one corner. You got Shaheem Carter at star. And then you've got a competition at the other corner between Savion and Surtain, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we thought. But then in the second half, you had Savion and Surtain at corners and you had Diggs at star. Now, I don't think that means, and obviously your safeties are in your safeties in base and in nickel are those are locked in with Deontay Thompson and McKinney. So so there's really two ways to look at that, right? The first way to look at that is that the competition is really between Surtain and Carter, even though they're not playing the same position. It's just who gets on the field. Is it Carter at star with Diggs and Savion as the corners, or is it Diggs at star with Surtain and Savion as the corners? Or was this just a matter of moving Diggs to star and taking Carter off the field as a way to maximize the amount of reps for Savion and for Surtain?
I think Saban made some comments that they were just they weren't sure who their backup star was going to be. So I think they were just experimenting live with Trayvon as the backup star, essentially.
That's interesting. Okay, so
I'm sort of inclined to agree with that, and kind of the last thing you said. I think it was like Surtain is kind of too good to keep off the field, but they still they didn't want to just sub him out for Savion and not let Savion get those reps too. Like, I think this was a, cross training, like in case you lose Shaheem at star, like you want Trayvon to be able to step in there. So I think it was a matter of maximizing the reps that Surtain and Savion got at corner and cross training Trayvon to be the backup star.
Yeah,
that's my inclination too, because there doesn't seem to be any reason to believe that Carter is going to be his job is in jeopardy. So like he's going to be like for sure the star going forward. So I think that's probably a fluid situation at corner opposite Diggs. I don't think Savion did anything to lose the job. I thought he generally played well. I don't think that they really got tested that much in this game. When we'll talk, and like you said, we'll talk about this in a minute. But when Louisville did throw the ball, they weren't really testing. They certainly weren't testing the vertical part of the field down the sideline. So they weren't forcing Diggs or Savion to chase for either in man or in cover three or something. They weren't forcing them to run with receivers on the field. And then they even when they were in man and stuff, they weren't attacking the outs. They still weren't really throwing the ball that much outside of the
It wasn't like you think back in 2016 in Anthony Averett's first start against USC. You remember the first couple plays they went downfield at Anthony
because it was the only player on the defense that they had a chance to exploit. Yeah, there wasn't anything like that in this game, so I don't think Yeah, so I think that they'll probably I would imagine that there'll be sort of a similar defensive back rotation this week, right? Just maximize the amount of reps, maximize the experience that the guys get, and and go from there. Because it's interesting, right? Like, I mean, Surtain obviously has no experience because he's a true freshman, but Savion doesn't really have any meaningful experience either. And
I don't know. I've read that he played like 10 games at LSU, but was any of that like he wasn't starting, was he?
It might have just been like special teams, maybe. I wasn't under the impression that he was playing like any sort of significant role. So, they're kind of under the same boat in terms of just wanting to maximize their experience and maximize their reps. So,
we do have a question from Matthew Asheville at M Asheville on Twitter. Said basically would love to hear your thoughts on Tua's ball security. Georgia players said post game coaches were telling him to strip the ball from Tua. I didn't hear that. I know, and
Georgia. Wait, Georgia, talking in the national championship, Georgia players were told that.
I guess.
Okay,
I've not heard that. Yeah, no, I mean, I think Saban sort of has a point there. He tends to, I definitely got nervous during that first touchdown pass. He tends to kind of hold the ball out wide when he's sort of scrambling around in the pocket. It hasn't bit him yet. It could. So you definitely would like to see him kind of, maybe tuck the ball in a little bit more when he's freewheeling around and stuff like that. But, ultimately at this point, if he's going to keep doing the kind of things that he did on Saturday, that is a minor complaint.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Mitch, what do you think about that?
Yeah, if it happens, it's not going to be often. It may happen once or twice, but it won't happen a lot. Speaking of turnovers and Tua, there was not even a ball that I was like close to being like picked off or like I was kind of expecting, this kind of like throw all over the field and maybe we'll take one interception with 3 turnovers type stuff. But like, I'm not even sure that's going to be much of an issue this year. Like his decision-making is so good that, and it combined with his accuracy that I'm not sure turnovers is going to be a huge deal for him.
I sort of, I agree in general. In terms of how instructive the Louisville game is for that, I do probably think it's important to at least recognize that like the Louisville defense is not very good, and there were guys running free all over the place. And Tua was insanely accurate. But I guess what I'm saying is like in a game where Alabama goes up against a better secondary, like a secondary that's going to play a lot of man, that's going to challenge these receivers, that's going to be close to them, the Tua is going to trust himself probably and try to make throws into tight coverages.
Right.
And if the interceptions are going to come, that's probably where they're going to come because he didn't have to, I guess, against Louisville, he didn't have to shy away from taking chances because there were no chances to take. Like the throws were all there.
Yeah.
The throws against a better team, the throws will still be there, but the margin for error will be smaller. And whereas like Jalen would have shied away from trying to make those throws where the margin for error was small, I don't think that Tua is going to shy away from that. And he really shouldn't, right? Because he's that good and he should trust his abilities. But I think that will sort of be the true test about whether you could conceivably have this game where he throws like 2 or 3 picks or something and puts the ball in harm's way. But obviously, one game in, like you're right. Like I totally agree that against Louisville, with the exception of that like weird fumble thing that wasn't a fumble, he didn't really ever make a, I guess as Pro Football Focus would say, like a turnover worthy play. But at the same time, like Carter was saying, there were times where he seems to be like a little fast and loose is too harsh. But where there were probably times where a higher degree of protection could be not warranted, I guess.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think? Let's just talk about. Okay, so one thing we talked about is defensive schematics in terms of dealing with passing plays. coverages on the back end, and we were wondering, like, okay, well, are we going to see a lot of match to try to get these guys ready because you have a very new secondary, or are they going to sort of take it easy and play a lot of man? I didn't notice anything too different than what they would do in any other game in any other year. It just seemed like sort of basic coverage. Played some man, played some zone, played a lot of match. Like, it was just kind of, you know.
It sort of reminded me of, I think it was the 2016 season going into the LSU game. We were kind of wondering, like, oh, you know, they had this really good run game with Leonard Fournette. Like, what are they going to do in terms of, like, maybe the defensive line should try, like, one gapping more. Maybe they should try to, like, get into the backfield and stop him before he gets ahead of steam. Like, that's where you could see, like, a schematic change from the normal, like, kind of two gapping stuff that they do against teams like LSU. And they did not do that. They played two gap. They played, you know, two gaps on the defensive front the whole game, and Fournette was just running into a brick wall the whole time. It was kind of like that, where we were like, well, you know, with this inexperienced secondary, do you maybe just play a lot of, like, cover one man and, you know, just let your corners play straight up? And no, they pretty much did what they always do.
And I think that's kind of I think it's smart to sort of, like, look back at past examples like you did with the LSU thing, because that's really Saban in a nutshell, right? Like, he'll make subtle, almost imperceptible changes for specific matchups. Like, you know, there'll be things that we're not even, like, a lot of which we're not even seeing, like the exact type of leverages that different guys play, and like where the corners leverage the receivers based on how far split out they are, or different little things in the front, or different little blitzes and stuff. You know, there'll be a lot of very sort of granular, specific, opponent-oriented changes that they'll make, but fundamentally, it always remains the same.
Yeah.
Saban calls his, like, they play their game. Like, they're just, this is my style of football. This is how I'm going to play. And, like, he's kind of, like, uncompromising. And I think that's a good thing. You know, he has a system. He trusts his system. The players learn the system. He adapts when needed. But fundamentally, like, you know, the structure is not, you know, compromised, like, game in and game out. And, you know, I think that fits well. Now, we were worried that there would be some issues in match. There were some issues in match. That's probably the most negative. Yeah, probably the most negative takeaway from this game. Mac seemed to indicate, and, you know, we didn't really talk about this, but I guess in the preview podcast, but it really shouldn't be much of a surprise. He has never called plays before. His experience on the whole is kind of limited. You know,
yeah. I think we kind of took his experience for granted a little bit when he really didn't play a ton even last year, and certainly has not been in this role before. And, you know, he said some stuff and it's like, oh, it was my first time and I guess I did okay. You know, they did some stuff that we hadn't seen before on film. And I think Saban sort of echoed that, and like seemed to be, the sentiment from Saban seemed to be like, you know, we made some errors, but it's nothing we can't correct. He certainly didn't seem, you know, unusually upset about it.
Yeah, Mitch, what do you think about those comments?
Yeah, I think Petrino's probably a good test for him anyway. So that it wasn't a huge issue is probably a good sign.
Yeah, and you know, rewatching the game, like, you can see it's kind of clear that some calls are coming in late, and there's some issues getting everybody on the same page, and there were definitely plays where not everybody was on the same page, and I think Mac brought that up in his press conference, where it's like, you know, you might not always get the call right, but just make sure everybody is running the same call.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody's going to be wrong, at least be wrong together. And there were times where not everybody was wrong together, where clearly some people were right and some people were wrong.
Yeah, the biggest facepalm one for me was that one you gift where Louisville ran mesh and two guys took the crosser to the right side of the field and nobody took the other one. Like, whoop.
Yeah, the irony of that, right, is that, like, against mesh, you want to be in zone. If you're in zone against mesh, it's like, okay, we've got this play stopped. Like, this is only a man beater, and then it ends up like a 20-yard gain because you, like, have to shoot more and more cross. And then we were thinking, like, more like, oh, well, you know, really concerned about bust down the field and, like, maintaining integrity on the back end. Like, there wasn't any of that. It was just like short stuff,
Yeah.
like not passing guys off well over the middle. There were issues with the linebackers. They didn't seem to cover the flats particularly well. And I think this is just a combination of, you really are super inexperienced, right? I mean, like we talked about how inexperienced the secondary is, but now, like, the inside linebackers are also super inexperienced. Like Dylan Moses has barely played. He played like 2 games last year, basically, right? Because like he missed the playoff. He started the paycheck game before Auburn, and then he played most of the Auburn game. Like, but he has very little experience. And Mac played through the Louisville game last year, but Sean Deion Hamilton and Rashaan Evans were the starters. So like he was kind of coming in like a sub role, and then he played a little bit against Auburn and then played the playoff games. But like, that's like a very limited experience. So, some of this stuff was probably to be expected. We shouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's a reason to panic. But it's definitely something. It's definitely probably like the biggest concern.
Yeah.
On the defense, at least as of right now.
Yeah. And, the thing is that it's a bit of a concern because you get a pretty good team that is going to test test that aspect of the defense in 2 weeks in Ole Miss. And that game's on the road. On the flip side, you're going to get a team that you can't really lose to in Arkansas. Can't really lose to, but, a team that they're not going to lose to in Arkansas State that is also going to test that this weekend. So that's going to get tested a lot right away. And so, if it goes the way you think it will, hopefully that having to face those issues continually, both in practice and in game settings over these first couple weeks of the season, will kind of get those issues solved.
Right. We only have a few more minutes left, and I want to quickly touch on Arkansas State, but just quickly, there was some hand-wringing about the pass rush. Obviously, without Terrell Lewis, the pass rush on standard downs is something of a concern. But the way it was like, I don't know. I feel like the emerging narrative from this game was that the pass rush on standard downs was like very disappointing. And I don't know where that comes from. I think like people see the quarterback be unencumbered in the pocket for a few plays, and suddenly it's like, oh my God, like we have no pass rush. But you're not going to get to the quarterback every time on standard downs. It's just kind of like how it works. And I thought they rushed the passer pretty well.
I mean, they ended up with 3 sacks and they hit pass a whole bunch more times. Like
so much in the first half when the pass rusher was supposedly poor, like they hit him a ton. And the completions were really not because he had so much time. They were just because there was usually some sort of bust in the underneath coverage or in the flats. And he was able to get rid of the ball to those guys. But, like, I thought the pass rush was pretty good. Like, yeah, they don't have that super dynamic pass rusher playing edge. But they, at least for one game, they kind of had a pretty good workaround. And that's a pretty good Louisville offensive line, who I think returns like 4 of their 5 starters. So I was not concerned. I didn't come away. I come away just generally, and I thought this before the Louisville game, acknowledging that they, without Terrell Lewis, they don't have that really dynamic player at edge. But I didn't come away because of what I saw in the Louisville game. Like I didn't have like a greater concern or anything like that.
Like this is not going to be like a top 5 pass rush in the country, but it's pretty good. And I don't really think they need it to be top level, especially if the secondary is as good as it apparently is going to be, despite all the inexperience.
What so is there anything, Mitch? Is there anything else you wanted to add, or anything else anybody want to add about the Louisville game?
Waddle at punt return is going to be fun.
Waddle at punt returns.
All the returns are fun again.
Jacob's returns going to be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. We didn't really see a lot of the punter, I guess, but he was. Yeah,
I mean, he was okay. Like he is definitely not J.K. Scott, but as long as he's not abysmal, it's not really going to matter for this team.
Mixed bag from Wilson Jones.
Yeah, again, like it's another Alabama kicker. Like at this point, it's like
just score touchdowns. Just score touchdowns.
Yeah, just score touchdowns. That's all.
He's got to make the extra points, and obviously he missed one of them. But just score touchdowns, and it won't matter.
He did have to kick like 7 extra points though, so like everybody misses an extra point once in a while.
Yeah, if he's kicking 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7 every game, I'll take it.
There you go. That's right. That's right. I like that. Now Arkansas State is supposed to be good offensively, right? Like the receivers are talented.
Quarterback's good. Justice Hansen, he's really good.
Quarterbacks transfer from some major school or something, like Oklahoma State or something like that, maybe?
He was at community college. Where did he start out? Oklahoma. Yeah, he was at Oklahoma.
And they were like top 30 in S&P Plus last year, I think. Arkansas State.
No. Very good.
Crazy. So, I mean, so this could be like, not like it's not like the most lopsided paycheck.
This is not like Charleston Southern. These guys are good. Like they're not. It'll be like like
Colorado State. I don't know.
Or one of those Middle Tennessee teams, one of those Middle Tennessee teams that they play.
Yeah, or a decent when they was it 2015 they played Western Kentucky. It was one of the years when Western Kentucky won 10 games. It was really good. And that game was like 38-10.
Yeah. 2012 it was only 35-0 against Western Kentucky. So yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. So that's good, right? Like I want the paycheck. I don't want to look at these paycheck games and be like they're playing like, nobody. Like I want it to be like a team that's like at least somewhat.
Yeah. I mean they really throw. I mean, I was looking at like Justice Hansen set like all kind of Sun Belt offensive records last year. And so they really throw the ball well enough to really test to make Alabama's pass defense work for it, which is exactly what you want given the issues they had last week and with Ole Miss coming up in 2 weeks. You don't want to be playing a triple option team right now. So this was sort of a well scheduled sequence for Alabama.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's sort of exactly what you want out of like a sort of like a paycheck preseason-y type game. A game you can't lose, but a game that will actually be helpful to your players in some sort of like meaningful way. So that's good.
I guess here what we ask ourselves is like, does Alabama cover? The line is
37.
Yeah, ESPN showing 36.5, so thereabouts.
Yeah.
I would take the cover. I'd take those points right now.
Yeah, I would too.
I normally am of the opinion that you do not bet on Alabama to cover paycheck games, but I would probably take that.
It doesn't seem so sure.
It's just it's like I'm sort of fighting the same battle. It's like I don't want to take Alabama to cover because I never take Alabama to cover the paycheck games, but it's Tua. But how much is
covered that? They covered 36.5 against Louisville last week. So
yeah, I was going to say 37 is not that much coming off of a 36 or whatever Louisville.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with it and say they win by 35 because I think they're actually going to give up maybe a few points possibly to this team. So I'll say they maybe they win by 5 touchdowns or something.
Yeah, I mean I could easily see it being 42-10, 42-14, something like that. So
50-17.
Let me ask you guys really quick before we end. How many series does Tua play this week?
I think he's done before halftime.
Before halftime. Okay. So that's like similar to this. I mean, well,
thereabouts. It's probably 5 or 6 possessions. I think at this point you don't want to pull. So I don't know. Maybe he plays into the third quarter because at this point, as good as he is and as much as you trust him, like he still doesn't have that many snaps under his belt.
This isn't like 2013 AJ McCarron or something.
Yeah.
I would say he's probably gonna get most of the snaps. More, I would say like 55-60%, but because he's so effective, he'll have more snaps. Whereas when Jalen and Matt come in, like they may play more game time, but they'll just have less series.
Interesting.
Because the offense won't be as effective.
Right, because when Tua is in, they're going to score in just a couple minutes or something. But yeah.
Do we riot if they punt with Tua at quarterback?
Yeah, that's something we got to talk about.
It would be disappointing. Although I don't know, maybe Skylar DeLong needs those reps.
I want to see them go in like
4th and 5 at midfield. Should they be punting or
no? They should just never punt with Tua. That should be the goal.
They need to go full. What's his name? That's the coach at Pulaski in in Arkansas. I don't remember his name, Kevin something, I think, but the guy who never punts. They need to adopt his philosophies for this for Tua.
Works for me. Works for me.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Good tight show. Got a lot of good stuff in an hour. We're gonna try to keep ourselves on the train this year a little more.
We did good. We did good.
Yeah, it was solid.
Stayed on target. We moved it along. I think I'm proud of us. Proud of us.
All right. So we'll see y'all next week, and roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Well,